Okay, hello everybody. My name is A.Smith. I am UK representative of Icator, and I'm here talking with Mr. Barrie Trower by a telephone call. Mr. Trower has kindly agreed to be our guest speaker for this conference. Hello, Mr. Trower.
Hello. I'm very pleased to do this for you.
No, we're very grateful for your time. We are ever so grateful. Thank you. Okay, so I thought we could start with you giving a brief introduction about yourself, your past and current work, if that's okay.
Okay, yes, Alison. I started studying microwaves in 1959 to go into military school in the Royal Navy, military school as it's now called. I studied all aspects of microwave warfare. My first degree, I studied nuclear and atomic physics. My dissertation was I studied the far end of the microwave band with regard to absorption. I have a higher degree where I studied the effect of microwaves on thinking processes in the brain. I also have a full teaching diploma where I'm qualified to teach higher mathematics and all of the sciences. In the Royal Navy, I was a diver. Along with all the other divers, we do underwater bomb disposal work, which involves microwaves underwater. When I left there, one of a small part of my work, I worked for the government. A small part of my work was debriefing captured spies involved in microwave warfare. When I retired, I taught advanced physics, sometimes degree level physics in the local colleges. And at the moment, I trawl the world giving lectures on this and writing research papers. And I'm the author of the highly confidential report on the Police and Emergency Services communication system for the Police Federation of England and Wales, which you have that system. And I'm also the author of the higher confidential report. One is a most confidential, the other is a higher confidential report for the senior officers. And periodically I do television documentaries and write research papers, which one at the moment, my last one, I think has been translated into 84 languages, and I'm told it is being spread over 100 countries at the moment. There you are.
That's fantastic, Barrie. I appreciate that. So the next question is, well, we both know that this conference is to raise awareness of electronic harassment of innocent civilians. They're known as targeted individuals and, as of recent years, Havana syndrome victims. But not all of our listeners will be aware as to what this actually means. I ask if you are able to describe what is happening to victims of these crimes.
Well, you've hit on quite a complex one there for the first question, which I like. The problem is synthetic telepathy or induced auditory influence, or put more simply, hearing voices or suddenly having an impulse to do or act in some way. That is legally transmitted in shops, supermarkets, and patents are taken out on the devices which are used. And they can be used to communicate with the deaf. In other words, the microwave pulses will allow the deaf to hear directly into the brain. And it is used in American shops to prevent people shoplifting. What they do is the shops, especially the big chain stores, if they see somebody they think is shoplifting or going to shoplift, they can induce a voice straight into the brain that says, "We're watching you, put it back, or leave the store, or we'll call the police." And the person will look shocked and look around because nobody else would hear it. It's directed straight at that person's ear. And I have a note. I wrote an essay on this 10 years ago, and I wrote here that one chain store, just one shop, saved $600,000 in 9 months by preventing shoplifters. And there are patents out on these machines, and they're not complicated. I mean, to me, any 15 or 16-year-old school child that understands simple mathematics and an element of science could make one. The only complication you may have is knowing which pulses to put into people's brains. When I was debriefing spies, I made a list, which I also published. I made a list of, I think it was around 60 neurological and physiological conditions that can be induced by putting pulses into the brain. I think the current list today, where people are still experimenting with them, it's around 600 or 700. Now, as they develop more parts of the human body and they recognize the cyclotronic or circadian resonant frequencies of the certain molecules, biological structures, then once you do that, you just make a pulse frequency that will interfere with them, using either resonance, constructive or destructive resonance. And so the fact you may be hearing things, you may be a mile from a chain store and hearing somebody saying something, because they go, these microwaves go straight through the stores, into the streets, into the houses. And it could be people talking to deaf people. So your first job is to determine whether it is not accidental or incidental, and it is deliberate. It certainly is deliberate in some cases, because it is the perfect stealth weapon. And if you want to induce, they say that any mood or behavior can be induced. And I know this has been proven by two very senior scientists. One of the scientists put a device close to a bull, a charging bull in Spain, where they have bullfights. And he went out into the arena in his normal clothes. And as the bull charged, he just sent a microwave pulse to the bull, and it just stopped there and was looking for grass to eat. And then he switched it off, and the bull charged, and he switched it on. Now, if you can do that to a charging bull, I have seen these pulse frequencies induce sexual aggression, sexual violence, causing harm to somebody. If you think of a mood or think of something that you would want somebody to do, there is a pulse frequency that can do it. And I know after every Olympics, I often get a call from some trainer from some country where the person, the athlete, was just about to get a gold medal, and all of a sudden they dropped whatever it was or had a moment's lap of concentration, and then they went from gold down to bronze. And somebody was saying to me, every 4 years they say, can that be done from somebody hiding something in the stands. And I said, of course it can. It's been done since the 50s and 60s, and has been perfected for the last 60, 70 years. So, yes, but yours could be accidental, or it could be somebody just saying, let's try this, and we'll try it all on young women, we'll try it all on the young men, we'll try it on builders. So it's one way to get an entire population sick, or to do what you want. And I've known it to be used. We used it, I'm ashamed to say, in the UK. The English government used it against the Catholics in Northern Ireland. The Americans used it against the nuclear disarmament groups, the women who camped outside the American base in England. And I was talking to one of the ladies quite recently, and the Americans pulsed the ladies, and it's documented, and made them all feel, most of them feel quite sick, and a lot broke out into breast cancer. And of course, when you're feeling ill and you've got breast cancer, the last thing you want to do is start demonstrating. So it is a weapon, and the last one was made just a couple of years ago. Its nickname is the Growler, and I read somewhere that it was tested on military people, and it just dropped them to the ground straight away. And it can be beamed from anything on the road that drives. It can be beamed from helicopters, planes. So if you have a huge demonstration and you want people to stop, you put the Growler on them for a few seconds, and that will do the trick.
Okay, there's incredibly interesting parts of that I actually relate to as a victim myself. I wondered if you might be able to describe when a victim is having their thoughts read.
Just hang on 2 seconds. Sorry, I'm just having a drink of water. I've got to keep. We are in the middle of a heat wave here. Okay, sorry. What's the next question?
I wondered if you could describe what is happening when a victim can tell that their thoughts are being read.
Yeah, of course. It goes from, I've made a list, I published a paper on this. Let me put my drink down, hang on. Right, I'll give you the official public list. It can be, let's have a look, here we go. Common symptoms: headache or migraine, skin problems, insomnia, fatigue, anxiety, memory loss, cognitive confusion, muscle pains, heart palpitations, irritability, cancers. You react to chemical sensitivity. And if we take the list a little bit further, I've got a paper here which was on my desk by sheer coincidence. Here we are. And this is from the American government. Neurological, cardiovascular, blood problems. Here we go. Headache, fatigue, perspiring, dizziness, menstrual disorders, irritability, agitation, drowsiness, sleepiness, depression, anxiety, forgetfulness, suicidal tendencies, and that goes right down to if the blood-brain barrier is compromised, and it's not difficult, microwaves will cross the blood-brain barrier, which is really, it's like a net, and they make the holes a little bit bigger. It stops toxins going into the brain, rather like a fishing net catches fish. But microwaves, they change the size of the holes. And it says here, once the blood-brain barrier is compromised, the individual could develop severe neuropathological symptoms, die, or become seriously impaired neurologically. There you are.
Thank you for that, Mr. Trower. That's fantastic.
Barrie, can you call me Barrie?
Of course I can, yes. Thank you, Barrie. I wondered, our lawyer actually had one specific question, which is with regards to actual visible burns that can appear on the skin. I wondered if you may be able to describe how that happens.
Very simply, yes. Microwaves are a form of radiation. And a paper was written on this by, it was called Not a Sunshine Story. I'm trying to think of his name. Olli Johansson, professor at the famous school in Sweden, famous college in Sweden. Olli Johansson wrote a paper, Not a Sunshine Story. And it's exactly the same. If you go out into the sun, even on a cloudy day, you can still get sunburned, and the skin will become sore. It will start to feel immensely tender, and you can, if you have personal defects in the skin, like moles or anything like that, or freckles, you don't have the pigmentation necessarily to defeat the electromagnetic waves, and you can develop skin irritability and skin cancer from microwaves, and it's only a matter of time because they act the same as the sun does on your skin, only the radiation takes longer. That's all. So there is no nice way that microwaves can interact with the body. And of course, people using cell phones will often say that when they stop making a call, especially if it's several minutes, that the entire side of that head feels warm. Now, if that part of the head feels warm, it only has to rise by 0.6 of 1 degree warmer, and what's known as the heat shock proteins go into action, thinking the body is about to be burned or overheated. They form, if you like, a scaffold around the cell, and they cannot distinguish between cancer cells and ordinary cells. So what they do is the heat shock proteins, they will form a scaffold around, if you have cancer cells that the body is hunting down to destroy, it will make them undestroyable. So you are actually protecting the cancer cells in the body, ready to develop later. So you can develop cancer from microwaves, the same as you can, or from microwaves, the same as you can from the sun. And if you care to look up Olli Johansson, professor, it's the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. The paper's called Not a Sunshine Story. And it's a very good question, Alison, as well, because with the latest 5G, it has been shown that the sweat cells in the skin, they are helical. They have like a little spiral inside the cell where the sweat duct is, and the size of this sweat duct in all of your skin, that is the same size as one of the 5G waves. And what that means is that if this particular 5G frequency is incident upon your body because they go through clothes. It's incident upon your skin. Every sweat pore in your body facing the direction of the microwave will act like an aerial, because it's how aerial works. All aerials, television aerials, radio aerials, they all work the same. You send a wave that is the same size or a multiple of the size, and when the wave hits the aerial, it sets up a vibration in the aerial. The electric part of the wave travels down through the aerial into your radio or television or cell phone. And that's how they work. So, but 5G is the same size as your skin, which means that you will get tremendous skin irritability from 5G.
Right, okay, thank you for that, Barrie. I appreciate that. Now, these types of weapon systems, they've been around a lot longer than one would think. Would you be able to give a brief history behind them?
Well, I mean, it was noticed when radar was being experimented on in the early 30s. It was known then that when they beamed in a particular direction, it would have a disastrous effect on the cattle. It would have a disastrous effect on the bird population. And they found that when they did postmortems on the birds and the bees and the arthropodia, which are all creepy crawlies to most people, when they sort of dissected them and had a look, that they found that some of them were actually cooked, because insects have an enormous surface area to body mass. I mean, if you think of a butterfly, it has a very, very small body, but enormous wings. And the same with birds, that they have a greater body area than body mass. So they are picking up all of these microwaves, and it is having a disastrous effect, especially the arthropodia which fly. So if you're looking at anything that flies and anything that crawls along the ground, because secondary to this, and I was having dinner with a king in one country. Sometimes I'm very fortunate to be invited to stay with royalty around the world. And the king, he actually said to me, he said, "Barrie, have a look in this field here." And he said, "What can you hear?" And I said, "Well, nothing." And he said, "Exactly." He said, "In this field, we have enormous ant hills, loads and loads of ant hills. We did have." He said, "And the ants crawl across the plants, and as soon as the tower went up, the ants, the same as any other navigating animal, and we have that ability, where you navigate via the Earth's north and south pole, the microwaves make you lose your sense of direction." And the king said to me, "Look, all of the ants have gone." And he said, "Now, everything, all the birds are coming and swarming down on our plants, and the locusts are coming. And for the first time in my country, we have to import vitamin C because we are developing scurvy." And this is the same with all flying animals. The birds get it later than the creepy crawlies, but every flying and navigating animal on the planet is being destroyed by microwaves. And that is how they affect all of these systems. There is nothing living, no plant, no tree, there is nothing living on this planet that does not get affected by microwaves. There are only three things, the postman's at the door. Okay, there are three things only three creatures I know that seem to thrive on microwaves. Bacterium and viruses thrive. They seem to multiply faster and grow better. A species that NASA have been beamed into space and they come back and they seem to have enjoyed themselves, called tardigrades. I don't even know which kingdom they belong in, and scorpions. And they are the only animals I know that are not badly affected by microwaves. All trees, all plants, everything living is. And everything, as I speak to you now, everything living is slowly dying from microwaves, from satellites, the towers, cell phones. Everything is slowly having its immune system suppressed and is succumbing, because if you oppress the immune system of any living thing and you improve the virus and bacterial survival rate, the bacteria and the viruses are going to take over as the immune system crashes. And that is going on all around the world now.
Okay, thank you, Barrie. I actually relate to that. I have developed a couple of autoimmune disorders as a result of my own personal situation. I wondered if you would be able to discuss any of the companies that you know of that are manufacturing and selling these weapons.
Hang on, I need a drink. Well, the companies selling these weapons, I can give you the patents for them even. The companies selling these or developing these, and then this is where you run up against a brick wall. They are developed by companies which are engaged or funded by the military. And as such, they automatically come under whatever country you're in, the Official Secrets Act. And they do that for several reasons, because they know what harm can come to this and that can come from knowing the pulse frequencies that will cause the brain, the heart, in these days, you can affect, in your body now, Alison, there are around 10,500 biological structures. Every single one can be made to change its job or stop its job by microwave frequencies. Every single one. I can affect your vision. I can make you speak in a funny voice. I can cause you to have instant diarrhea. I can cause your whole bowel to collapse. I can cause your heart to change its beat. And for this reason, the people developing this, something I abhor and disagree with totally, is that they use monkeys and other mammals and insects and insecticides and all sorts of things. But they try them on animals, and then they get the volunteer. Sometimes prisoners often volunteer to get their sentences reduced. But can you get hold of the companies? The simple answer is no. But what some countries have done is especially where you have a university that is strictly funded for and by the government will say to the university, we want you to produce an instrument that will send this pulse frequency out, and we want it to change this molecular structure. And 6 graduates who want to do a PhD doctorate will jump at the chance because all expenses paid. They don't know it's going to be used for harm. They are just following the directions laid down, and they will produce it. They then sign a confidential act saying they're not allowed to discuss it, and they pass their exams, and then the government or the industry is so pleased it comes back for a postdoctoral course, and they keep the same people and going over and over. And if you imagine the intelligence of these people and say, right, I'm giving you all the funding you want in 6 years to experiment, and nobody can criticize you, nobody can stop you, imagine what teams of people can come up with. And if you knew half the things I knew, you probably wouldn't sleep at night. But it is absolutely frightening because without knowing it, they are forming the perfect biological weapon. I mean, if one country wants to act against another country, what if you could create, and this can be done, and I promise you this can be done, and I've known it for 20 years. If you want to create a plague, an infection across huge swathes of fields where the food is all contaminated, the animals are so contaminated they can't be sold, the plants will not grow. It is easy for plant or what you call biological warfare or physiological warfare on people and animals. You can, these days, you can create viruses and bacterial growths over any part of the world, any country all at once over the world, and you can do it from any part of the world. You haven't got to be there. It's incredibly easy to do, and to my knowledge there are 16 countries that have the ability to do this, to cause mass infection across an animal species, a plant species, or a human species. And they are still practicing that today.
Okay, thank you, Barrie. I appreciate that. I wanted to also ask you, if you don't mind, as to when you first became aware that these technologies are actually being used upon innocent people around the world.
Oh, in the 60s. And I can give you when I first became aware. I was a Royal Navy diver, and I'm not saying this because I'm especially clever or brave. All divers from all military services do what I do. I am just one of several thousands around the world. I was taking a bomb to pieces underwater that were planted to blow up a sort of an oil installation. And the visibility was absolutely dreadful where I was down. So, excuse me, I came up and I spoke to my buddy who was, when you dive, you have a buddy and you can send up a distress beacon or something, and the buddy will come straight down and find out what the problem is. So I came up carrying the bomb, and my buddy diver, my buddy who the other diver, in military language that I wouldn't dare say over the phone, reminded me. There's a delivery man out there. He's going to make a bit of noise. He told me in military terms how stupid I was, And he said, if they're watching this now, all they have to do is pass a microwave beam onto the bomb. The photoelectric cell will go up, you'll go up with it, so will I, and so will the oil tanks next to us. So he says, take it down there out of range. And when I came up and admitted how stupid I was, he said, it's not that. He said, but it's also, if they can't see the bomb, because your back's to it, your back's to where they're transmitting the microwave, he said they will aim them at your head and make you make a mistake. He said they have the pulse frequencies that will make you confused and you won't know what you're doing. And again, you'll blow yourself up and me and the oil tankers next to us. And that was a lesson I learned. And that was 61. And I know that you can go back through the 50s, the pre-Operation Pandora, in the 50s, they were also experimenting on this. And I think it's around 53, 54, when they developed machines that could measure the brain frequencies. The first thing they did was develop the weapons that could match those frequencies. And it is a perfect stealth weapon because you can cover a whole town, a whole city, a whole military barracks with this particular pulse frequency, and you can just render everybody useless. And this is how it's done. So if you're asking, when I was personally involved in that in 61, and when I looked into it, because it interested me as an intentional scientist, I found that they could do this in 53. So we're certainly going back to the early 50s.
Okay, Barry, thank you very much for that. So I know
sorry, Alison, this is my bad manners. Please forgive me for that. It's still going on today. It's the Havana syndrome.
Yes.
Look up the Havana syndrome. The ideal targets, as they've always been, ideal targets are the foreigners in other countries. You know, where you have embassies. If you bombard an embassy from over the road, you can either use them to reflect off the windows to bounce back, and you can put them into a radio and you can hear whatever's being said the other side of the glass, or you can have them go through the brickwork and basically make everybody ill. And I know the highest, there were papers published, fraudulent papers published on this, but I had one of the real copies. When the Russians microwaved the American embassy in Moscow, the highest cancer rate in the world and death rate is still from the ambassadors and the staff from the American embassy that was microwaved in Russia. And they still have the record for the highest population density of cancers and leukemias and stillbirths and miscarriages.
This was the famous Moscow signal.
Oh yeah. But all that is on computer. Today they're still doing embassies, and it's very difficult to say who's doing it because you can do it from another country just by beaming the microwaves off the ionosphere, which is a layer of hydrogen and helium, and you can. And any schoolboy that knows geometry could give you the angle to come down. And as I say, that to my knowledge, there are 16 areas in the world. The one in America, Alaska, is called HAARP, HAARP. a nun, a very scientific nun, that I had the pleasure of reading a paper that she sent to me. Extremely brilliant, sort of Einsteinian brain. And she wrote a book on harp in Alaska. And she said, this harp is not for playing. It has the ability to destroy all mankind and everything on the planet. And she's right. But we knew that in the 50s. It was confirmed in the 60s. It was practiced in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's still going on today. And if your listeners are suddenly feeling this and this and this, and there are in an adult 10,500 biological parts of their bodies that will respond differently to 700 pulses, and you multiply 7.5 or 10,500 by 700, you've got how many different things they can change in the body, and it's way over 3 million.
Wow, that is an absolutely huge number, Barrie. I wasn't aware as to how much.
Yeah, because if one country, and I know they do this, if one country says, look, we want to take over this country, what's the best way to do it? Now, if one country wants to take over another country, and I know I'm overrunning, but this is okay. The next people won't mind waiting for a minute. If you want to overrun a country, and I've given this in evidence in courts, you don't need to do what Russia is doing now to it's the country it's taking over. You don't need to send tanks and guns and missiles and rockets. You can do it with microwaves. It's very, very easy and almost priceless. It costs very, very little. So you can do it with microwaves, and people will leave one country and go to another country and behave like tourists, and they can just lay down, and I've given this as evidence because it has been done, to warn countries. If I came to a country, I could lay down a dormant plague, maybe one of the Black Death plagues, or a virus that causes foot and mouth or something like that. All I've got to do is lay it down, go to a country, shake out sort of a dust bag across a few fields or several fields, and then come back after my holiday. And then all I have to do is aim the particular pulse frequency that wakes the dormant bacteria or virus up, and it will then spring into life. And I've ruined all of your wheat fields, or I've ruined all of your cattle fields. And I said in my evidence, I said, now, if I want to make $1 billion, all I have to do while I'm ruining yours is breed tens of thousands of cattle or grow fields and fields and tons of wheat. And as yours is going down and you can't sell it, mine is growing, and all I need to do is multiply the cost 4 or 5-fold, and I make several billions or 10 billions of American dollars, and it's easy, and this is where people are, and they can do it. They can do it on individual people. They might come and say, let's see how this works on teenagers. Let's see how this works on elderly men, on pregnant women, on animals. Excuse me. And they can go around the country with microwaves hidden in cameras that will transmit, binoculars, even a simple cell phone can do it, up to sort of a meter, up to 1.5 kilometers range. Excuse me. it's easily done, and people will go to a country and say, "Oh, look, there's an interesting person. Let's see what this does to them," and they will monitor it. They will also have access to your doctor. They will hack into your doctor's computer. They will go to the person. It's really not difficult, and look at your medical file and say, "Look, this is what she's complaining of. She's had this, and a miscarriage, and this, and she's feeling this. We've got this right." And I have read in some cases a success is when the person goes to a psychiatrist, because it's usually when you go to somebody and say, "I'm hearing voices and they're making me do this, and they're making me have diarrhea, and they're waking me up in the night," the doctor will write down psychiatrist, and the doctor will write down section this person, because the medical department in this country, the National Health Service, will not recognize this. And the government will not recognize it because they use it. And a success to somebody doing this is that you have been locked up for life in a psychiatric asylum, or you have killed yourself. That is a success, and it's chalked up as a good success, and it goes down in the book of how to ruin this country if and when we want to.
Yes, it is horrific the way that they attempt to discredit people, obviously, to keep all of this under wraps. I think the last thing I'd like to ask you, if that's okay, Barrie, is...
Yeah, go on, one more.
Initially, why have they done this to civilians? Because now it seems to be above and beyond simple research and human experimentation. Now it seems to be just literally about torture.
I can give you the answer. Hang on, I just need to change hands. My arm is going numb here. Hang on. Well, I can give you the perfect answer to that, Alison. And this is going on in every country, and I think there are 273 of them in the world. And I wish that I had been the person clever enough to think this up, but I wasn't. And I regret that I couldn't think this up. But I was with another royal family. I think I've only seen about 7, but they are incredibly intelligent and well educated. The king I was talking to, he had what we call an Oxbridge law degree. In other words, he gained a law degree, international law degree, from Oxford or Cambridge. And he said, I seem to all have dinners with kings these days. I'm having dinner, and he said, "I'll tell you one thing, Barrie." He said, "In 50 years, I will have lost the viability of my kingdom, my reign, and my country. In 50 years, I will not be a king." And the cause, or whoever is doing it, he said, "I am actually paying the people to do it, and so is everybody else in the country." And the way they do it, he said, they come here, they tell us a whole heap of lies about how safe microwaves are, and they've been around for years and no one has ever been hurt, which is a lie. And before you know it, it's zonk, 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 zonk. You've got transmitters all over your country, all over the traffic signs, everything has got transmitters in, and everybody has cell phones. But he says, look at where the money is going. The people pay the cell phone industries, and we don't have any cell phone industry in this country. Now, our annual bill that leaves the country for telephone calls to the industry is trillions. And what we get back is only a few million in where somebody, a farmer, has said, I want $5,000 for you to transmit on my land. That's all that comes back. He said, so what they are doing is they are bleeding the country dry of funding. He said, that's the first thing. All of the money all of your people spend on the communications industry is being lost. It's going out. The next thing is that we know around 40% of our population are already experiencing microwave sickness and our health bill at our last estimate is going to go up 40-fold. So whatever your health bill is in this country, it's going up also another 40%. He said, we do not have the funding in our country to pay the increased hospital bills. We are losing our trees that we depend on and our plants that we depend on and our crops. We don't depend on them solely for the country, we export, but now we can't export because everything we grow now we want. So he said, my country is becoming sicker and sicker physically. We are losing most of our money every year in the trillions to the industry, and then the industry come back at us and say, look, we recognize you have a problem. We'll tell you what, if you will let us have some of your land, we will pay your health bill for you and send in the drugs. We will import food for you free of charge. And what we want is this chunk of land and this chunk of land and this chunk of land. He said, we agreed. He said, we agreed because we get free medicines, we get free food coming in, and I've given up this chunk of land, this chunk of land. And it is sudden. And the king said, I heard of a case that came to my ear of a farmer who was cycling to his farm, and he said, I was on my way to the farm, and there was a man in the middle of the road facing me with a gun, well, a big rifle gun. And the man said, he was American, and he said, if you pass me, I will shoot you. And the farmer said, but I work over there. And the man said, no, you don't. This is now United States property. Turn around, go back the way you came, or I will shoot you, or I will shoot everybody else coming this way. And he turned around and went back. So if you have a country, and I know America have done this, and you've got the land, then what the royalty isn't told is that they've had satellites orbiting the Earth doing deep penetration X-rays and deep penetration research, and they know that this land has a lot of a precious metal or a precious component that is used in medicines or something like that. And now the country that has moved over, they have full mineral and mining rights. They also have all of the water rights, and they are now taking all of your minerals and all of those rights out of the country, and they are bleeding the country dry, and it still isn't finished there. He said, we have to accept, with all of the industries they're bringing in, we have to accept their workforce. Our workforce cannot work for them, which means that we get nothing. their workforce and their immigrants coming over, they receive the pay from that country. And as now citizens of this country, they now move in and now they have voting rights. And if you think 20, 30 years to bring about the downfall of a country, that is not a long time. They are now, some of these countries, they are now bringing down the total economic and ground value of a country because they move in and they do the jobs other people don't want to do, the immigrants, and they are citizens, and the next thing they do is they are allowed to vote. And then they get one of their kind on the local council, and then it's 2 or 3, and then it becomes the city council, and then it becomes an MP. Now as an MP, they have all of the secret information in the ministerial library that they are fully entitled to. And then you've got other MPs, and now you can actually start voting and getting more MPs in and changing the country's legal system. And it's bit by bit, drop by drop, taking over. And I went to one country, I won't name who they are on air, but I was talking to the minister because they have this problem, and he just said, "You won't believe this, Barry," and we were having, not dinner, this was breakfast now. He said, "You won't believe this, Barry." He said, "We now have so many immigrants in this country that we cannot tax them because they seem to be working on the black economy, taxi drivers and that, and that there seems to be nothing coming in. But we cannot tax only the legal working people." He says, "I can't tax those because there aren't enough of them to pay the taxes to run the entire country." He said, "So the only way we're going to get tax from all the illegals we've got now, which outnumbers the legal people, so the illegal now outnumber the legal people." He said, "The only way we can get our tax is to tax everything that everybody cannot live without, namely food, water." So even the immigrants have to pay tax now on their water, their food, everything that they do, they pay tax on. And he said it's the only way we can get it now. And this is going slowly all around the world. And the problem is that it is a silent taking over of a country. And it's still going on, and you can see it in several countries. And this is how the multi-billionaires, trillionaires now, is taking over the world virtually by what they're doing. And people like me can see it, but it is very difficult to try and get a government to change when you don't have access to them. And this is what's going on, and it's going on in your countries and Belgium and everywhere, European Union. It's going on there now.
Okay, thank you, Barry. I appreciate that. Yes, it is obviously a global issue with the notion of taking over countries, and obviously centered around control. But this is now happening just to individuals where it seems to have gone above and beyond research and taking over. It seems to be sort of directed at individuals and is definitely what I would refer to as torture. Okay, yeah, I think we can leave it there. I and others who know of you, Barry, we all know that you feel very strongly about these crimes. We'd like to thank you massively for your commitment and for speaking with us today. It is certainly a huge help in helping those unaware to understand what is really happening and the magnitude of the situation.
Yeah. May I make a suggestion, Alison?
Yes.
Once you've played this, and once the people listening have sort of digested it, what I would like is if you would invite them to send you. Do you have email?
Yes.
Yeah. If you would invite them to send you questions, and then you group the questions, and I don't want the questions in advance. I can't work if I have the questions in advance. I like it like we did today, where I don't know what's going to be asked, and then I can stay on the ball. Once I get questions in advance, I'm trying to think of one whilst I'm answering another. It doesn't work. So what I would like you to do is it doesn't matter anything, nothing is off the table. Nothing is off the table. Ask them to send in their questions, anything they like, group the questions, and then call me again, and then we'll do this again, and you just fire away at their questions.
I really do appreciate that. It's a fantastic idea. Thank you, Barry.
It's my pleasure.
I also wondered if I may be able to ask, because we will update the Icator website after this conference, which is on Friday, today rather. The papers that you've mentioned along the duration of our interview, would we be able to have access to them so our readers could read them, our listeners could read them?
Let me think. No, in a word. All of the papers I'm mentioning, what I suggest is the people listening to this, if they have somebody in this country, or you're in this country, aren't you, or are you abroad at the moment? I don't know. But if there is somebody, if they know somebody in this country that can come to my house, I live on the edge of Dartmoor, just the other side of Exeter or Newton Abbot. If a person can come here with a computer that will download a USB sticks that will download USB, and a device that will photograph or photocopy documents that are not on a USB stick, something where you could, you just take a picture of a page. What I recommend is you come here. I will give you sort of 4 hours of my time. You can download a lot of the papers, and over a period of a couple of hours, you can photograph the documents that you particularly want, and you do it whilst you are being videoed. The reason is because if I gave you 300 Cold War documents and said, there you are, you don't have the time to read. Some of the documents are 300 pages long, and you want one relevant page. Now, if you come here and download the documents, I can say, I can give you an index of that particular bit of the document, and I can save you all of the reading. It would take you years to read them all. And with no disrespect, some people, if you don't have degrees in physics or electrical engineering, I know you do, but if you don't have degrees in physics or nuclear and atomic physics, some of it may go over your head, and it may be a bit that's essential that goes over your head. And I know you're a very brilliant engineer, but what I would ask is if somebody can come to my house and video me giving you the sheets, and then they all come numbered, and I can say, this represents this, this is what they got from this was from this, and the last person to do this was a vet, and he did this, and he got back, and he recognized all of the papers all in order, all that he wanted, and sent me a beautiful card saying how brilliant everything was laid out, and he could go into his action straight away. So all I want is one person here, or two people if you want to come together, with a computer that will download a USB stick, with a smart device like a cell phone that will photograph documents, and we're probably talking about 100 documents. And as you go through them, I will explain what they are and what they are needed for. Okay, so you can do that. And if any of your listeners have a relative or somebody here, they can do it. I only explain on a camera what it is and the number. And we number the pages, and I explain what it is. So if anyone has anyone living near me, I can't travel to you. I can give you 4 hours. I can give you this time. But if somebody says, oh, shoot over to Belgium or something, it's a day to go over. Then it's a day to settle down and prepare my papers, a day to talk to people. Then it's another day. And by the time I've got back, I've lost a week. And where I could have done what I did in 4 or 5 hours, I'm now 5 days behind. And I've got to try and catch up. And it's awfully difficult to catch up when you're the only one in the world. And I can have 1,000 people a month. Usually it's 600. I can have 1,000 people a month contact me. So, but if anyone can come, you can come. If anyone can come with those devices, yes, I'll give you everything you want.
Yes, Barrie, I would certainly love to do that. I know that we've discussed that before. I have the devices that would be able to do those things, and I would be very, very happy to do that at a convenient time for you. I appreciate that.
Well, why don't you? Yeah, well, when you get your next batch of questions, why don't you come then?
Yeah, it sounds.
And you can film me answering the questions for the people, and you can film me explaining the papers. When you've got your questions in, ring me. I will give you priority because I know how important your work is, and I know the people that are suffering. I will give you priority. I usually leave a few hours in a week where I can talk to my wife, but sometimes she doesn't get spoken to, and I give you priority. But she forgives me anyway because she knows what I'm doing. But when you got all your questions, I'll listen, ring me, and I'll say, can you come? I'll provide the coffee and the chocolate biscuits. It will only cost you the petrol. That's it.
Well, Barrie, I don't know what to say. I would certainly love to take you up on that offer, and I thank you massively for the offer and also for your time today. And
no, it's my pleasure. And the people can see me answering their questions, which is much better than just having me blab away on telephone.
I agree, and obviously there's going to be a lot of listeners that are the followers of our Lawyers Association, and I think that they will probably have a lot of questions. So it is a huge, huge thank you to you, Barrie. Thank you so much for your time and your commitment to this call.
It's my pleasure. When I have lawyers here, I do have a lot of legal decisions, and I have a lot of papers that lawyers are searching for today, thinking, I wish I could get hold of a paper that does this. And the chances are I've got it. And I do have lawyers here that feel like I'm Father Christmas because I've got documents that they could never get access to. And they spring out of here, like a young chicken, in the field. They're really happy. So I do have legal decisions.
Okay, Barrie.
Okay.
Duly noted, and we will discuss that at a later date with the board members and the lawyers. And again, I don't know how to thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Barrie. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Okay, Alison, you take care. Bye.
Bye, Barrie. Thank you.